There is a moment in every human life when the silence becomes unbearable, not the quiet that comforts, but the kind that echoes, the kind that speaks louder than any voice and stares back at you like a mirror, unblinking and cold. It is in this moment that life does not gently ask you to change. It demands it by force. It strips you of everything you thought made you whole. It leaves you exposed, raw, hollow. That is the hour when life breaks you. You don't feel it coming. It isn't announced. There's no warning. It arrives like a storm you didn't see forming, though the signs were there, subtle cracks, small tremors in your days. One morning you wake up and the ground is gone beneath your feet. The life you knew has vanished. You are no longer who you were, but you have not yet become what you must be. You exist in a limbo of aching stillness, a place where nothing is certain, a place where you can only breathe to survive the next minute, and that breath is heavy. This is the dark night of the soul, and when it comes, it is merciless. There is no dignity in despair. It humbles you with hands made of ice. It pries open the parts of your heart you've hidden away for years. You feel exposed, not to the world, but to yourself. And that is the cruelest cut of all. For in this hour, the weight of every failure you've tried to forget rushes back in. The echoes of every harsh word you've spoken, every regret you've buried, every moment you've betrayed your own spirit, they rise to meet you in this stillness. It's not the loss that wounds you most. It's the feeling that perhaps you were never enough in the first place. You try to reach for meaning, but your hands come back empty. You search for a reason, a light, a sign, but the night gives you nothing. It is not here to guide you. It is here to break you. And that breaking is not gentle. It feels like betrayal. It feels like abandonment by everything you ever believed in. Your purpose, your God, your past, your dreams. You question everything. You question yourself. There are days when getting out of bed feels like a battle. There are hours when the weight of your own thoughts is so heavy you can hardly speak. The world moves on around you, laughter on screens, people rushing through life with purpose, and you stand still, unable to join them. You feel like a ghost inside your own skin. You smile when you must. You nod when it's expected. But inside, you are unraveling. You may weep in places no one sees, in your car, in the shower, late at night when even the moon looks away. You may hide your pain behind perfect photos and practiced words, but you know the truth. You are not okay. You haven't been for a long time. And here is the secret no one tells you about being broken. It makes the world look sharper. It makes you feel everything with unbearable intensity. You notice things others don't. The way a stranger avoids eye contact, the way someone says, "I'm fine," but their hands are trembling, the sadness behind the smile of a waitress, the ache in the eyes of a passerby. You see the brokenness in others because you have become familiar with it in yourself. Pain has made you perceptive. But that perception is not a gift, not yet. It is a burden, because it reminds you that pain is everywhere and you are not immune. You never were. You try to fix yourself. You read books. You make promises to change. You whisper affirmations that sound more like lies than truth. You write lists, set goals, search for anything to pull yourself out of the quicksand. But nothing works. Not really, because this isn't a problem to be solved. It's a season to be endured. And in that realization, there is more pain, because we are taught to fix, to fight, to control, but no one teaches us how to surrender. To surrender not in defeat, but in trust. Trust that this breaking is not pointless, that this emptiness is not the end. There comes a moment, deep in the quiet, when something shifts, not loudly, not dramatically, just a small flicker of defiance, a breath that says, "I don't know how, but I want to live." And that desire, fragile and almost invisible, becomes your lifeline. It does not erase the pain. It does not fix the circumstances, but it gives you a reason to try again, to wake up, even when you don't want to take one more step, even if your legs shake, to reach out, even if your hands are trembling. That is how the healing begins. It is not a grand revelation. It is not an overnight miracle. It is a slow, messy, uneven walk back to yourself. Some days you will feel strong. You will laugh again and not feel guilty for it. You will taste joy and let it sit on your tongue. Other days, the sadness will return like a tide you can't hold back, and you will hate yourself for not being better yet. But that too is part of the journey. Because healing is not linear. It spirals, it revisits, it tests, but it moves even when it doesn't feel like it. One day you will look back on this chapter and not recognize who you were. You will remember the ache, but you will not feel it in your bones the same way. You will see the person who sat in silence and wept and realize they survived. You survived. And not only did you survive, you transformed. You learned how to hold pain without becoming it. You learned how to breathe in the middle of heartbreak. You discovered a strength no one taught you because it could only be found in fire. You stopped chasing perfection and began seeking truth. You stopped needing to be understood by others and began understanding yourself. You stopped performing and started existing, fully, flawed, and free. And perhaps most beautifully, you began to find beauty in the broken. Not because brokenness is beautiful in itself, but because you realize that the light that shines through the cracks is not weakness. It's where the soul speaks. You began to love differently, softer, slower, deeper. You began to speak with kindness, not out of politeness, but because you knew the weight of cruel words. You began to listen, not just to respond, but to understand. Because once you've been unheard, you never want someone else to feel invisible. You began to walk this world not as someone who has all the answers, but as someone who has learned to live the questions. You no longer fear the night because you've danced with your demons and found them tired, not terrifying. You no longer chase validation because you've discovered that self-worth is not earned by applause. It is reclaimed in solitude. You no longer see yourself as a victim of fate, but as a witness of your own rising. And when life breaks you again, and it will, because this life is a cycle of building and breaking, you will not collapse. You will not shatter in the same way. You will remember that you've been here before, and you came through. You will look the storm in the eye and say, I know who I am now, and I am not afraid. So if you are in that place now, that hollow, aching, weary space, do not give up. Not because someone told you not to, but because buried underneath the grief, the confusion, the exhaustion, there is still a pulse. There is still a fight in you. There is still a voice that whispers, this is not the end of your story. You may not know how to fix your life. That's okay. You're not meant to have all the answers. You're meant to keep showing up, breath by breath, moment by moment, until the light begins to return. And it will. Not all at once, but one sunrise at a time, one deep conversation at a time, one act of courage at a time, one kind word, one long walk, one brave decision at a time. You don't need to become someone else. You don't need to impress the world. You don't need to hurry your healing. You just need to stay. Stay through the breaking, stay through the questions, stay through the emptiness. Because the version of you that will emerge on the other side will be someone you never knew existed. Someone deeper, someone softer, someone infinitely more powerful. And when others come to you broken, confused, and afraid, you will not offer cliches. You will not offer quick fixes. You will offer presence, understanding, hope, not because you read it in a book, but because you lived it. And that kind of hope, that lived truth, is the most powerful gift you can ever give. So let life break you. Let it tear down what was never truly yours. Let it humble you, shake you, bring you to your knees. But do not let it define you. You are not the brokenness. You are the becoming. And you are not alone. There comes a moment, not marked by trumpets or fire, but by something far quieter, when the fog that has hung over your soul for days, months, perhaps even years, begins to thin. You may not even notice it at first. The shift is subtle, almost imperceptible, a breath that doesn't carry the same weight, a morning where, for the first time in what feels like forever, the light doesn't sting your eyes. A song you used to love plays, and instead of hurting, it hums softly against your ribs like something familiar returning. It is not joy, not yet, but it is the absence of despair, and that alone is a miracle. This is the beginning of something sacred, the beginning of awakening. No one talks about the quiet victories, the days when you still feel broken, but you get up anyway. The nights when your mind is still loud, but you choose not to listen. The moments when you resist the temptation to give up, not out of strength, but because some quiet part of you is curious to see what comes next. That curiosity, however small, is the first spark. It does not burn like fire. It flickers, it fades, it returns, but you notice it. It's there. And for the first time in a long while, something inside you begins to lean toward the light. It's not courage that comes first. It's noticing. The birds still sing. The leaves still change. The wind still moves through the trees as if nothing happened, as if life continues, and you are still part of it. For so long, you felt like a ghost in the world, watching but not touching, present but not alive. Now you begin to feel the shape of your own existence again. You take longer walks, not because you want to heal, but because sitting still feels worse. You speak to people, not because you are ready to be seen, but because you are tired of hiding. You smile, and it doesn't feel fake this time. You laugh, and for a second, it doesn't sound foreign. There is no single day when it all changes. No thunderbolt moment when the weight lifts for good. The awakening is slow, gentle. It is like thawing ice, one drop at a time. A melt so gradual you barely notice it until one day you're drenched in it. You start to remember who you were before the breaking, or rather, you start to see someone new being born from it. You realize you don't need to return to who you were. That version of you broke for a reason. The person you're becoming is softer where they once were sharp, wiser where they once were certain, humble where they once were proud, not lesser, just truer. You stop craving control and begin to crave clarity, not the kind of clarity that guarantees outcomes, but the kind that makes peace with not knowing. You start to live with open hands instead of clenched fists. You start to forgive yourself for the things you did to survive, the mistakes, the denial, the self-sabotage. You begin to understand that survival looks messy. It often masquerades as failure, but it is anything but. You stop asking, "Why did this happen to me?" and begin wondering, "What is this trying to teach me?" The questions shift, the anger softens, the need for answers becomes less important than the need for presence. You start to walk slower, breathe deeper, listen more. There's a moment when you hear your own voice again, not the one layered in doubt and fear, but the ancient one, the voice beneath all the noise. It does not scream, it whispers, and it says something so simple, so powerful you stop in your tracks. You are still here. You are still here. After everything, after all the nights you didn't think you'd survive, after all the days you moved through like a shadow, after all the heartbreaks and disappointments and betrayals, you are still here. And that alone is enough to rebuild. You begin to honor your endurance, not the polished kind you post about, but the raw, bruised, invisible kind, the kind that made you get out of bed on the day you wanted to disappear, the kind that kept you breathing when the air felt too heavy, the kind that showed up even when no one saw it. That kind of strength is real, and now you begin to see it too. You start doing things not because they fix you, but because they feel right. Drinking more water, sitting in the sun, talking to someone honestly for the first time in years, saying no, saying yes, reclaiming the small rituals that remind you you matter, Even if the world didn't show it, even if the people you love didn't say it, even if life hasn't rewarded you yet, you matter. There's a strange beauty in waking up to your own worth. It's not loud, it's not even always joyful, it's more like recognition, like meeting someone you used to know and realizing they never left. That someone is you, not the perfect you, not the version you try to present to the world, the one beneath all of that, the one who has been watching quietly, waiting patiently for you to return. You begin to feel the edges of your power again, not as dominance, not as control, but as presence. You start showing up in rooms with your whole self, not shrinking, not hiding. You stop editing your pain for the comfort of others. You stop apologizing for taking up space. You stop abandoning yourself to please people who never truly saw you. And in doing so, you begin to attract what is real. Real connection, real conversation, real belonging. Because when you begin to live in truth, everything that is false begins to fall away. And yes, some things will leave, some people, some dreams, some stories you told yourself. But in their place comes something better, something lasting. You realize you were never meant to be who others expected you to be. You were never meant to be easy to understand. You were never meant to dim your light for the comfort of the room. You were meant to burn, to blaze, to be seen, not for attention, but for awakening. You are not here to perform healing. You are here to live it, messy, imperfect, real. You are not here to chase happiness like a prize. You are here to uncover it layer by layer like a treasure buried inside you all along. You are not broken. You are breaking open. And from that opening, everything flows. Compassion, creativity, curiosity, connection. You see the world differently now. You don't rush past people. You don't judge so quickly. You listen. You notice. You stay longer in moments. You realize presence is not just a word, it's a practice. You begin to believe in softness again, in slow mornings, in quiet love, in the sacredness of sitting with someone and simply saying, I'm here. You begin to believe in your own ability to comfort yourself. You become your own sanctuary. And it doesn't mean the pain disappears forever. It doesn't mean you won't be tested again. But when the darkness comes, it doesn't own you anymore. You recognize it, you greet it, you sit with it, but you no longer let it define you. Because now you know light lives here too. You become the kind of person who walks with both sorrow and joy and holds them in the same hands. You become the kind of person who no longer waits for permission to be whole. You write your own permission slip. You say your own name and it feels like a prayer. You speak truth not to be right, but to be real. You forgive not to forget, but to be free. You love not to be completed, but to express the completeness you found within. You start living as someone who has come home to themselves. And in that returning, everything changes. You stop running, you stop hiding, you start being fully, freely, fiercely. And as you walk through life now, people may not see what changed, but they'll feel it. They'll feel the peace that wraps around you like armor, the groundedness in your voice, the softness in your gaze, the fire in your words, the steadiness in your presence. And they'll wonder what happened to you. You'll just smile. Because how could you explain? How could you put into words the moment the darkness lifted and you realized you were still breathing? How could you explain the 1,000 silent victories that no one else saw? How could you explain the sacred, slow return of your own soul? You don't need to explain. You just need to keep living with open hands, with open heart, with open eyes, because this life is not about arriving. It's about awakening again and again. There is a moment, subtle but undeniable, when you feel your soul shift. Not loudly, not suddenly, but powerfully. It does not announce itself with grandeur, nor does it come dressed in certainty. It arrives in quiet rebellion, a silent, sacred refusal to stay broken, and that is when the rising begins. You do not rise with trumpets. You do not rise with applause. You rise quietly, barefoot, bruised, slowly, and yet with a steadiness you've never known. You are no longer crawling from the ashes. You are becoming the flame. The pain didn't leave you unmarked. You carry the memory of every fall, every silence, every scream that never left your throat. But the difference now is you no longer see those scars as shame. They are proof, proof that you have lived, proof that you have endured, proof that you did not disappear when the world turned its back. You walked through fire, and though it tried to consume you, it only refined you. Something in you grew in the darkness, a kind of strength that cannot be taught, a wisdom carved from suffering, a compassion born not from comfort, but from collapse. You know what it means to be shattered, and so you tread gently. You've become soft, not weak, soft like water that wears down mountains, soft like the dawn that returns even after the longest night. Your softness is your rebellion, and your resilience is your roar. You've stopped waiting for someone to rescue you. That myth is gone now. No one is coming. And strangely, that doesn't scare you anymore because you found something more powerful than rescue. You found self-return, the holy act of coming back to yourself, not as you were, but as you were meant to be all along. There is a strength in you now that cannot be undone. It's not loud. It doesn't need to be. It's the kind that walks into a room and doesn't need to prove anything. It's the kind that looks in the mirror and no longer seeks permission. You have become your own witness, your own home, your own foundation, and that is the power of rising. It isn't about climbing higher, it's about standing deeper. You don't need everyone to understand you. You don't need the approval of those who never saw your worth. You don't need to explain the parts of your journey that were too sacred to be spoken aloud. You've made peace with being misunderstood. You've made peace with your path. And in that peace, you've found freedom. The way you speak has changed. There's less urgency, more intention. The way you move through the world has changed. There's less rush, more presence. You no longer live to impress, you live to express. You no longer chase love, you become it. You no longer beg for space, you take it unapologetically. You've discovered that power is not about dominance, it's about presence. It's about showing up fully, even when your hands still tremble. It's about owning your story, even the messy pages, especially the messy pages, because those are the ones that taught you how to write your own ending. You don't fear being broken again, not because you think life will spare you, but because you know who you are now when it happens. You know the road back to yourself. You know that every time life pulls you under, you resurface stronger. You've died and come back in 1,000 quiet ways, and every return has made you more whole. You've become a mosaic, shattered, rearranged, and still beautiful, maybe even more so, because now your beauty isn't pristine, it's lived in, it's earned, it's yours. You walk differently now. There's weight in your step, not burden, but groundedness. You carry the stories of survival in your spine. You carry the sacred names of the people you used to be in your breath. You walk forward not with arrogance, but with reverence. You have learned to honor the struggle, and in doing so, you've learned to honor yourself. You've stopped reaching backward. The past no longer holds you hostage. You've made peace with what was, and more importantly, with what wasn't. You've stopped trying to rewrite it. You've stopped waiting for the apology that will never come. You've stopped shrinking in the presence of memories. They no longer haunt you. They remind you. You've stopped measuring your worth by your productivity. You've stopped tying your value to how useful you are to others. You've started seeing yourself as inherently worthy, worthy of rest, of love, of belonging, even on your worst days. Even when you're not performing, even when you don't feel like enough. Because now you know being is enough, living is enough. Breathing, existing, continuing, that is enough. You've started choosing yourself in rooms where you used to vanish. You've started speaking when you used to stay silent. You've started staying when you wanted to run and walking away when you stayed too long. Your boundaries are not walls anymore. They are bridges to yourself. They are acts of love, not just for you, but for everyone you allow into your life, because you've learned The people who truly see you honor your boundaries. They don't question your light, they bask in it. You've become more than a survivor. You are a creator now. You don't just endure, you build. You build peace, you build purpose. You build homes and hearts and meaning in minutes. You build a life that feels like truth. And you do it all without waiting for perfection. You've stopped waiting for the pain to vanish before you begin. You've stopped waiting for the confidence to arrive before you take the first step. You've stopped waiting to be chosen. You've chosen yourself. And that changes everything. You no longer apologize for how deeply you feel, for how wildly you hope, for how stubbornly you dream. You wear your vulnerability as armor now, not to protect, but to connect, because you've seen the power of honesty. You've seen the strength in saying, "Me too." You've seen what happens when one brave soul rises. It gives others permission to rise too. Your story has become a light, not because it's finished, but because it's real. You've begun to live with sacred rebellion, a refusal to settle, a refusal to conform, a refusal to abandon the parts of yourself that once felt like too much. Your too muchness is your magic, your sensitivity, your fire, your wild heart. All of it belongs. And as you rise, something else happens. You begin to lift others, not by fixing, not by saving, but simply by being. You become a mirror, reflecting back to others their own strength, their own truth. You become a place of safety, a reminder that healing is possible, that rising is possible, that joy can grow even in the soil of grief. You begin to lead, not with noise, but with example, not with ego, but with essence. You lead by living your truth, by walking your talk, by standing in your power, not above others, but beside them. Because now you understand, rising is not a solo act, it's a collective calling. When you rise, you carry generations with you. You break chains, you shift patterns, you heal not just yourself, but everyone who comes after you. Your courage echoes, your light expands, your becoming ripples out into the world in ways you may never see, but they are real. And in your quiet moments, you will feel it. The peace of knowing you didn't give up, the pride of knowing you rebuilt with bare hands and broken hope, the joy of knowing you are finally living as the truest version of yourself. Not who the world expected you to be, but who you were always meant to become. You are no longer chasing healing. You are embodying it. You are no longer chasing purpose. You are living it. You are no longer waiting for life to begin. You are rising into it right now. And the view from here, it's different, not perfect, but alive, real, whole. You look around and realize you're surrounded by others who are rising too, quietly, powerfully, just like you. And together, you create a world built not on performance, but presence, not on pain, but purpose. You are not who you once were. You are not the pain that shaped you. You are the power that came after. And now, every step you take is a declaration. I have risen. I am still rising, and I will never fall the same way again.